Good morning. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson. I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee B of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure? Can you also please turn off your cameras with the exception of the committee members, unless you're the person speaking? This is to reduce the bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under regulations for these types of meeting. I also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. I advise that this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site, the link which can be found in the agenda, and that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Mike Sharp, and Councillor Mary Locke was a nominated substitute member. Can I welcome you to this hearing to an application in respect of Malt 126 Billsley Lane, Moseley, Birmingham, B13 9RD. I'll begin with some introductions. My name is Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are the members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mary Locke and Adam Higgs. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer Bapinda Nandra.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning. Committee Manager Katie Townsend.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? Firstly, the applicant.
My name is Mike Nixon from In Confidence, representing Lisa Dingley, who is also present.
Oh, yeah,
Good
that's
morning,
me.
Mike. And good morning, Lisa. Do we have Philip Morgan as well?
Hi, yes, I'm here, Philip Morgan.
Yeah, good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so those making representations. Got Fiona Adams, the Moseley Society.
Yes, that's me. Sorry, I'm not in focus. Fiona Adams.
Is Fiona here?
Yes. Can you hear
Sorry,
me?
I can hardly hear you.
Right. I'll see if I can turn my.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Martin Mullany.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Anita Moore.
Good morning.
Good morning. Vernon King.
Good morning.
Good morning. Amy Bradbury.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Brian Lynch
Yes, thank you.
and Jasbir Kahir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Just before you move on, we do have someone else in attendance that's just listed as guest. If they could confirm who they are, as we don't have anyone else that has confirmed attendance.
So
Right.
that's myself, Mr. King.
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Mr.
That's me. It's Mr. King, Vernon King. I'm the one
Vernon
who's showing
King.
this guest.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
Sorry.
thank you for
That's
clarifying.
fine, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a representative who's going to speak on behalf of all of you, or do you all wish to speak individually? So that would affect the time that we can allow for each speaker. Maybe as a collect, if we have a representative, then they will have more time. I don't know how you wish to proceed on this.
Could I say something? We haven't all managed to get together because we weren't all copied into emails. So it's very difficult compared with coming to the council house.
Right.
Some of us have prepared short statements, but I'm not sure about everybody else. So as far as I know, everybody would like to speak.
Fine. Okay, so we'll take short speeches from each individual.
Chair, can I interrupt here? Yes, Mr. King is one of the people shown as guest, but there is a second guest just shown as guest. Can that person say who they are, please?
What I'll do is I'll log out. It's Mr. King. I'll log out, log back in, and I'll put my name on so we can see if there is two separate ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mute.
Apologies. Have we identified the two guests?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Fine. Okay, we'll proceed. Could I ask if any persons making representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing? No. Thank you. Nobody wishes to withdraw. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules set out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's hearing, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online. But wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We are using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. The button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? Officers will also type their job title. The meeting will not proceed until you all have done so.
Sorry, I haven't got access to the chat function. Fiona Adams here.
Okay, we'll note that. That's fine, Fiona.
That's everyone, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Can you all please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat? As Fiona doesn't have access to the chat, can we, I'll keep an eye on the chat, and if there's anything that's relevant, I'll relay it to Fiona. If any participant has dialed in on an audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard.
Yes, good morning, Chair. I can hear clearly. It's Mike Nixon from In Confidence Limited.
Thank you, Mike. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you're the person speaking. If there are any problems with bandwidth which causes difficulties with the sound, I may, my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any further preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now or alerting me verbally. No. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the Licensed Officer, Bapindra Nandra, will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We're asking if this can be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Next, those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it's somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphones and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, they must signify this using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you're viewing at this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which the questions are dealt with. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function, and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or having problems with your internet connection, please use a chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they have just said. It is therefore important that you use a chat function as soon as possible, as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that there's a problem caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn your cameras off when you're not the person speaking. And for those who don't have the chat facility, please alert me verbally. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice in a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of this meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer, Bapinda Nandra, to present the report, please, as slowly, as clearly as you can.
Thank you, Chair. Moseley Food and Drink Limited applied on the 25th of November 2021 for the grant of a premises licence for Malt 126 Billesley Lane, Moseley, Birmingham, B13 9RD. The purpose of the report is to consider representations that have been made in respect of an application for a premises licence, which initially sought to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 9 AM until 11:30 PM Monday to Sunday. The applicant has agreed to amend the scope of the application after discussions with planning, with the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises to cease at 8 PM Monday to Saturday, for consumption on the premises to cease at 7:30 PM Monday to Saturday and 6:30 PM Sunday and bank holidays. The premises is to remain open to the public from 9 AM until 8 PM Monday to Saturday and 9 AM until 7 PM Sunday and bank holidays. A representation had been received from planning as a responsible authority, which is attached at Appendix 1. However, I can confirm, as a result of the above amendments to the application, this representation has now been withdrawn. Representations have been received from other persons, including a representation in support of the application, which is attached at Appendix 24. See Appendices 2 to 24. The application, including supporting documents, is attached at Appendix 25. Conditions have been agreed with West Midlands Police and the applicant, which are attached at Appendix 26. The site location plans are attached at Appendix 27. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the license in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the license subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the license any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the license as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry. Would the applicant like to make their presentations now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Nixon, Director of In Confidence Licensing Consultancy, and I act for Lisa Dingley of Moseley Food and Drink Limited in her application for this premises licence at Melt. Lisa is here today along with her partner Phil Morgan, and they'll be able to answer any specific questions that you may have. There's a legal presumption in favour of granting this licence. Your discretion as a licensing subcommittee has been engaged due to the outstanding letters of representation received from local residents. There are no objections from any of the responsible authorities who have recognised that it is far better to have a restaurant operating with a premises licence than a restaurant operating without a premises licence. I'd like to draw your attention, please, to my email sent to the objectors on the 30th of December. It's on page 55 of the agenda file. This was sent along with full details of the proposed conditions and the extra conditions since agreed with the police. I mention this email because I think some of the objectors might also mention it. And I stand by its content. I'm quite happy for it to be scrutinised for its accuracy and legality by your lawyer. Lisa and I are very grateful for those few residents who took the time to make contact with us. The purpose of my email was originally to invite residents to engage with me or to meet with Lisa, as is encouraged by the licensing process, and to properly address any relevant concerns that they may have, but also to help to manage the expectations of the objectors. There are, of course, limits to what a licensing hearing can achieve to satisfy any concerns raised by residents, and it must not be confused with a planning application. Those who did respond to my email, who have met with Lisa, have largely responded very positively, as Lisa will be able to explain. We're grateful too to the gentleman who wrote in support of the application, who has contradicted many of the arguments made by some of the initial objections. And I would urge you also to read his letter on page 34 as Appendix 24. The original application was amended twice, as has been said, in response to ongoing concerns raised by some residents. Many objectors are concerned only by the proposal to operate the restaurant after 8 p.m, which would be in breach of planning. Lisa was never going to operate beyond what planning allowed. The property is subject to a planning application that's under consideration. But even though she did not need to do so, and purely as a goodwill gesture, Lisa instructed me last week to amend the application, as you have heard, so that the restaurant will cease trading at 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 7 p.m. Sundays and bank holidays. This is entirely consistent with the current planning approval for this site. This change has also been communicated to each and every person that raised an objection, but still, sadly, some are unhappy. So before you is an application to allow the sale of alcohol at Lisa's restaurant until 7:30 p.m. weekdays and 6:30 p.m. Sunday and bank holiday, allowing a 30-minute period for an orderly dispersal of customers after the last sale of alcohol with food. So let's be quite clear. 126 Billesley Lane can operate perfectly legally as a restaurant, with or without a licence. It has planning permission to do so. What we are considering today is whether that restaurant should be allowed to sell alcohol under the terms of a premises licence, or should customers simply be invited to bring their own alcohol. I speak as a former police licensing officer and an award-winning lecturer in socially responsible licence retailing, and I can say that it is most desirable for this or any other restaurant to operate with the strict controls and obligations of a premises licence, rather than without a premises licence. When Lisa first instructed me, she made it very clear that her business depends and will depend on the goodwill of local people. She asked me to create a licence application that would provide reassurance for anyone who lives in the vicinity. The result is the application before you, with over 50, I think it's actually 57 conditions, committing Lisa to safeguarding and promoting all of the licensing objectives. I'll be happy to talk through any of these conditions if you wish. These conditions have been shared with each of the objectors. If Lisa and her staff fail to follow any one of these conditions, she would be breaking the law, and her licence can be reviewed and it can be revoked. We welcome the right of local people to raise legitimate concerns, of course we do, but we're here today to consider the impact of licensable activity on the licensing objectives. That is simply the sale of alcohol as an accompaniment to food. There is no application for regulated entertainment or for late night refreshment. The hours now proposed are essentially daytime hours. The impact of the sale of alcohol is all that matters at this hearing. Nothing else is relevant. We're not here to consider the very existence of Melt Restaurant. The premises are not within a cumulative impact area, so Lisa doesn't have to prove that she needs the licence. The behaviour of people in the area or of other premises is not relevant and must be disregarded. Car parking is not a relevant consideration today. This is not a planning hearing, but Lisa will confirm that she anticipates that most of her customers will arrive on foot anyway. We would ask you and the remaining objectors to please keep this application in perspective. This is a simple application for a premises licence to allow Lisa to serve alcohol with food during the daytime. This is about someone being able to have a glass of wine or a small beer with their meal. Haven't we all done that at some point? Did we then urinate in the street, threaten children, smash bottles, drop litter or fight? Of course we didn't. Lisa takes her responsibilities very seriously. The submitted application is fully consistent with your statement of licensing policy and the Section 182 guidance. It reflects industry best practice. The multiple conditions in the application, plus all the mandatory conditions, meet all the risks to the licensing objectives. They are robust, measurable and enforceable. Each one of the responsible authorities has scrutinised the application and concluded that any risks to the objectives has been fully met. And that was even when we were proposing later hours. Let me please now hand over to Lisa and Phil, unless anyone has any questions for me at this stage.
Lisa?
Hiya, hello.
Hello. Hello.
I have a short question that obviously I'd like to read. To introduce myself, my name's Lisa and I'm one of the owners of Melt. Melt is a family business. It's a collaboration between me and my partner, Philip, and my cousin, David. The concept of Melt is based around melted cheese and our focus is on quality, not quantity. Our mission with our new venture is to bring relaxed family dining to my local neighbourhood. I've lived in Kings Heath and Moseley my whole life and live 2 streets away from the premises. I've run a successful food business before, just up the road in neighbouring Kings Heath. As such, I completely understand some of the concerns around bringing licensed premises to the area, which is why the self-imposed licence conditions go beyond what is legally required. I hope to bring together the wonderful and vibrant community in which we live through good food and great company. And yes, that means a bottle of wine too. The property itself has stood vacant for many years. Whilst we've been renovating the premises, we have been met with an overwhelming positive response from the locals. Many have stopped to chat about what we are doing and are waiting eagerly for us to open. A resident of Southlands Road has contacted us about a job for his teenage daughter. Being able to offer jobs to local people is something we are really happy to be able to do. I acknowledge that some local residents have expressed concern too, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank those who have engaged with me during this process. Through the process, I have learned that one of the restaurant's neighbours is an author. He met with me after making a representation to discuss his concerns and ended the meeting by asking me if we'd be open to hosting a book signing event for his new book. This is exactly the kind of local event we would love to host. I hope that this demonstrates that we are community-minded, local people who simply want to bring a neighbourhood cafe and restaurant to life. Birmingham has a long tradition of mixed-use commercial and residential properties existing together in harmony, and it is our intention to do just that, live in harmony with our neighbours, because after all, we hope that those neighbours will be customers too. I know that one of the concerns is parking in the vicinity of the premises. We anticipate the vast majority of our customers will live within walking distance, and in fact, it's one of the reasons why we chose the location. I will personally be ensuring that all staff have ample and adequate training to ensure that all licensing objectives are met and continually adhered to. I understand the responsibility of having an alcohol licence and take this matter very seriously. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to reiterate that we are creating a local business in my local area as well for the benefit of my fellow local people. And to thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Does Philip wish to make any submissions?
Hi. Yes.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Philip, and I'm a co-owner of Malt. I'm actually Australian, and my hometown of Melbourne is famous for its cafe culture. I'm really excited to be able to bring a slice of happy and relaxed Australia to my adopted home. Throughout the process of applying for a premises licence, it's become apparent to us that a few of the nearby residents have concerns based on past experience in regards to the planning and development of the property. We recognise we need to build relationships and trust, something we're really happy to do, which is why, as a gesture of goodwill, we did reduce the premises hours applied for to 8 p.m. We hope that this will help to ease concerns and build confidence in us. We just need the opportunity. Personally, I think that having the licensing objectives is good for our business as well as the local area. Who doesn't want to live or work in a clean and safe area? Our drinks menu will be small but carefully curated to pair wine with cheese and offer some locally produced craft ales and beer. And that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is that all of the submissions that the various representatives of the applicant wish to make?
Thank you. Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members?
No questions, thank you, Chair.
None from me, Chair.
Thank you. Can those making representations present their case now, please? And I'll start with Fiona Adams from the Moseley Society.
Right. I've got something I want to read out. On Friday, we received notice that the applicant had agreed to reduce the requested licence hours to fit in with those for which she had planning approval, but we decided to maintain our objection. That's because we think this is an unsuitable location for a licensed restaurant from both the resident's point of view and also for the applicant. We think you'll be doing her a favour if you refuse the application. If you decide to grant it for the hours now requested, we strongly advise her to await the outcome of the consultation on low traffic neighbourhoods, which could see Bilsey Lane blocked to through traffic, before investing any more money in the premises. We have always regarded 124 and 126 Bilsey Lane as unsuitable locations for anything other than residential use. The owner of the property tried hard, but unsuccessfully, to get planning permission to open a fish and chip shop. Permission was eventually given for 2 retail shops, but who would open a retail shop in this location? One Stop has taken over from all the previous retail businesses and meets the needs of the locality as a multi-purpose shop. It is only the relaxation of planning regulations by the current government that has enabled Flaming Burgers and now Melt to think of opening here. The most recent change of planning use classes and relaxation of rules about takeaway food was in response to the crisis on the high street caused by the pandemic. But Bilsley Lane is not a high street, and if the government had thought about it a bit longer, they should have restricted their relaxation to high streets and not enabled it to be employed in residential areas. The letters submitted by residents, apart from the one who is the tenant of the landlord of Melt, all stress the residential nature of this part of Moseley. It is only the through traffic and dangerous speeding along Bilsley Lane that detracts from this, and that problem is in the process of being addressed. You can see from the letter from the planning officer that the applicant is not going to automatically receive permission to extend their hours. The planning system has throughout regarded this as an address where residential amenity is paramount. We hope the licensing committee will agree that this is not a suitable place for a licensed premises. If the applicant really wishes to go ahead and open an unlicensed food business trading until 8 p.m, then she can do this. But if I were her, I'd be looking at one of the many empty premises in Moseley or Kings Heath to start her business. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. I'll move on to Martin Mullany. If you'd like to make your presentation now, please.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I welcome that the applicant has amended their hours, because that was my major concern initially. Having spoken since with other neighbours who are here, who live immediately around the premises, I still do have concerns that this will become a licensed premises. And I know from experience of, say, Moseley, where you have restaurants that end up becoming basically pubs, that the food becomes a minor part and it becomes a bar. And if you do decide to give permission, that there are conditions that drink has to be sold, alcohol can only be sold with food to prevent it becoming a bar as such, and also restrictions on the use of the outside area for drinking alcohol, because this premises is a kind of weird, like if you go inside, most of the food will be served in the basement. It's a windowless basement, that's where most of the covers are. So most of the customers will end up being on the frontage or in the rear garden if there's room. And I would just like some controls on the use of the outdoor areas for drinking alcohol and conditions to prevent it turning into, in effect, a bar. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Next presentation, Anita Moore. Would you like to make your presentation, please?
Thank you. My concerns are really the same as the other neighbours, that I have no objections to a cafe. I think that would be really very nice and would use it. But I do have concerns that having a licensed restaurant in this area could lead to becoming a bar. It seems small for a restaurant, so I do understand there's a lot of profit to be made on alcohol when you're sitting and eating food. So those are the concerns, really. So I think it's been said, and I certainly wouldn't want them to be sat outside either, on Bilsley Lane, on the corner there, and I live relatively close to the restaurant. So I think that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Brian Lynch. Would you like to make your presentation, please?
Hello, can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can hear you.
Predominantly, as most people are sort of interested in the development of this particular place, this is a residential area, and that's the reason why most people are obviously objecting to it. I'd like to carry on from where Martin left off about the outside areas, particularly the forecourt. Are you aware that back in January 2019, that the owner of the property was shown to have extended the frontage by about 300 millimetres, 3 feet forward of all the other properties? I believe they were asked to address that, and they've never done that. So I'd like to ask the question, where do we stand on that subject now? Thanks.
We'll take questions. I'll bring this into the questions at the end. Okay, Brian, but that's not for licensing to determine. It's actually a planning matter, which you'd need to bring up with the planning department.
Can I just say that I understand what you're saying, but the forecourt area is going to be used as part of the business, so therefore it is part of this hearing, and it will affect the neighbourhood. So I don't see you can separate it out, and the fact that it's actually not in line with what the council have advised the owner, therefore they can get more people on that area. It has to be relevant.
Right, well, I'll take that up with the solicitor when we have our deliberations. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything further?
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. And next we have Vernon King. If you'd like to make your presentation, please.
Okay, yeah, I'll keep it short. Yeah, so the thing is, as other people have said, it's the introduction of a local restaurant, not against that. My concern is strictly around the license to sell alcohol. I'm thinking I said it's a residential area, and as you probably know from the things just down the road, Moseley Village, they have issues where sort of you have drink and where people can drink. They have issues that are ongoing. You're almost, even though it's a smaller scale, the potential for that to happen in this area as a residential area, it's not that it's not going to happen. It's very probable that it will happen. As I think Mike said, he said, if I sort of misquote him, please forgive me, when he said, when we went for a drink, we didn't all come out and urinate and do whatever. But some people do. You've got an area that doesn't have that now, that there is potential for that to happen. Now, there was something that Martin said about conditions that I think if you did allow, then it should be conditions where it's alcohol sold with food. And I don't know how it is with the licensing, whether when you allow a license, do you do it for a certain time that it can be reviewed? Because if it came there and it worked and there's no issue, then that's not a problem. But how do we do it if there is an issue? Would there be any comeback? So for me, it's going to be a case of, I would say there is potential impact. You're having it where you can have people that can have, they'll be having a drink. When kids aren't on school holidays, then you're going to have people drinking around the time the kids are coming out of school and travelling around, and sort of coming back home. On school holidays, you'll have a premises. I know they said they're trying to do it so it's family based, but you will have people come there that sort of aren't from the area, don't know the area potentially. That you've got the mix of kids playing out and then a place that's selling sort of alcohol on site. So that's sort of my primary concern, is that you've got an interaction and there is potential for things to happen. I know people say, even though it's very slight, when it comes to kids, I'm not sort of into this. It's very slight. If it could happen, I'll stray away from it. But like I said, if you do allow it, definite conditions, alcohol with food, and then have it where, if, like I said, I don't know how it works properly, have it where you actually say, look, you have it for this time and we'll review what has happened. Are there any incidents around the area? I know the owners can't control that, but to me, when you come in, you have to accept the responsibility that things like these can happen. So that's it from my side.
Thank you, Vernon. And next, Amy Bradbury, if you'd like to make your presentation, please.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So We, as a family, my husband and 2 children, live directly opposite both premises. I know we're talking about 126. We're really concerned about the effect of noise, disturbance, people drinking alcohol outside the premises in full view of my daughter's bedroom window. If this is granted, and we hope it isn't, this is going to be an ongoing issue for the whole time it's open, for the whole time that we live there. That's her bedroom. She's going to be looking down at people drinking, being disturbed, trying to do her homework. It's going to affect their sleep, potentially. And there's going to be more noise. People live there too because it's really quiet. We moved here because it is a residential area. We've spent 10 years or more objecting to applications for this. I know this is licensing, but it's relevant. Now they've got planning permission, it's good to be chipping away. Now they've got an application for 8, if they get an application for 8 o'clock, they will repeal this and it will just continue. And it's causing us distress. It's causing us to lose sleep about this. So I just wanted to show the human impact of this. I understand all the regulations and conditions that might be applied, and I appreciate everybody that's already commented on that. My other concern is that, for Lisa, it's just not going to really make much money. I'd like to talk to Mike's point about involving the local community. The only time the local community has been involved is when we received a letter from Martin, told us about the licence application, and then we got an email off Mike. The people that own the property haven't been involved in asking us our opinions up until we were invited to speak to her, and I spoke to her last Thursday. So I appreciate she wants to be a community place, but no one's been asked about it, and we're all really angry about it, if I'm honest. So thank you. That kind of covers how I feel about it. And everybody else has been very generous and thinking more about the conditions and the licensing application itself. I basically want to protect my children against harm of moral or psychological. Birmingham City Council has a duty to protect the people that live here, and I would appreciate it if that could be taken into consideration.
Thank you, Amy. And move on to, I believe, which is the final representation is just Birger here.
This is we're the family that live right behind the back garden for this establishment, as that's on Slatons Road. And literally, our main concern is we've got a view of the rear garden from our bedroom from upstairs on the bay window, and we can normally hear the noise in the background from normally the front, people parking up, people will probably be entering and exiting, and also we've got concerns of consequences of when you have alcohol consumption. There's people who have louder conversations, they normally tend to have a smoke every now and then as well, so there's nowhere to smoke, and it's just that general consequence of heightened number of people around the area, which this is a very, very quiet residential area, has been for as long as we've lived there, which is over 25 years. And the concerns are there are a lot of young families on our street, and this is, if you just want to go for a normal walk, you're going to be confronted with conversations that may be inappropriate, or maybe just the volume of people having loud conversations will make it quite uncomfortable to just have a walk by without being slightly intimidated. So it is more a consequence of the effects of having alcohol, and also the gatherings after when people are exiting the premises, they tend to have a conversation, gather in small groups. So it's all of that sort of ambient noise. And also we haven't really thought about the amount of waste. There will be, I'm guessing, bottles, glass, things that will then have to be transported in and out of the building for deliveries. So there's also a consequence of activities outside the alcohol, but to get the alcohol there or the pumps filled or however it's going to be served, there's also concerns of the impact of that. And it is, like I said, it's one of the things, it's going to be constant and ongoing throughout the day, and it's really not appropriate for the area. Yeah, that's it from us.
Okay, thank you, Jasbir. And thank you to everyone who's made their presentations. I'll open it up to members. Do we have any questions from members?
No questions, thank you, Chair.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, do those making representations wish to make a closing submission? They will start in reverse order. So if we just keep it very brief, because there's quite a few of you, but if you do wish to make a final closing submission, now is the time. So I'll go in reverse order. Jasbir here.
No, so no further thing, but just a reiteration, this is a quite residential area and always has been. We've got plenty of pubs around the area and drinking establishments, so another one isn't really required at all. Okay, thank you.
Amy Bradbury.
Hello. Yeah, I would like to reiterate what Jasbir's just said. I would be grateful if you could reject this licensing application. Thank you.
Thank you. Vernon King.
Just to reiterate, as people have said as well, there's ample restaurants and pubs that provide you with drinks and stuff that are within easy walk of where people live.
Thank you. Brian Lynch.
Nothing further. I'd just like to add something that obviously affects one of the people that was commenting on just earlier on, that this extension to the forecourt, moving forward with all the other properties, does in fact have a further impact on the houses directly across the road from there. So it should be taken seriously. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anita Moore.
I think everybody's said everything actually, so thank you. And supporting what my neighbours Jazz and Rush have said about the noise that gets added to alcohol. I hadn't really thought of that consideration, and actually they're right. You know, the deliveries and the consequences of serving alcohol as well, that's going to have another impact on our neighbourhood. So thank you.
Thank you. And Martin Mullany.
Yes, just to add that if you are minded to approve, would it be possible to have conditions controlling the use of the forecourt, which is immediately next to residential houses, and also any conditions that could prevent this being just turned into a bar, which has happened in restaurants in Moseley. I don't know, conditions that say that only alcohol can be served with food.
Martin. And finally, Fiona Adams.
No, I don't have anything to add. I'd like to be making jokes about wine and cheese parties, but I'll stop.
Okay, thank you, Fiona, and thank you all, everyone, for your presentations. I'll now move over to the applicant. Does the applicant wish to make a closing submission?
Yes, please. It's Mike Nixon again. I'll invite Lisa just after me just to finish off briefly. But can I just say, you've heard from the objectors here today, and many of them have said that they welcome a cafe or a restaurant, but surely they want one that has conditions surrounding the consumption of alcohol, not one that opens as a cafe with a bring your own policy, with no conditions whatsoever. And every concern that's been raised this morning and in the letters of representation is fully addressed by the 57 conditions, including one that says that would stop the premises becoming a bar. It simply cannot become a bar. The condition says that the sale of alcohol shall primarily be to complement the provision of food. And that is the standard condition you would have in any restaurant. That allows a situation where maybe there's a party of 4 people there. One's having a light bite, which arguably doesn't quite satisfy the law in relation to a restaurant, but they want a glass of wine with their friends who are having a full meal. So it is measurable, it's enforceable, it cannot be a bar. The law and these conditions do not allow that to be the case. The application has attracted no opposition from your own responsible authorities. This includes the Environmental Protection Team, who deal with all matters to do with public nuisance, trading standards, public health, the fire officer, children's services, and even the licensing authority. As you heard, we agreed some extra conditions with the police, and the planning objection was withdrawn when the hours were reduced to match current planning approval. This property will be a restaurant. All of the authorities are now perfectly happy to support this application. We, of course, respect the right of interested parties to raise concerns, but they have to be relevant concerns under licensing law. The Section 182 guidance says that a valid representation must be about the likely impact of the application on the licensing objectives, and likely is defined as probable. It's for an objector to provide this evidence of the probable effect, evidence of risks to the objectives that have been missed by your own responsible authorities and have not been covered by the 57 conditions that we've got in our application. Your decision today is not a binary one of grant or refuse. You can grant the application but add or amend conditions. But your response has to be proportionate, and it has to be necessary to promote the licensing objectives. But importantly, it must be evidence-based. With respect, I don't believe we've heard evidence that can affect the grant of this application. Lisa and her team can't be judged until they've begun operating at these premises. I would respectfully ask that you grant the application today, and I would ask Lisa, please, to have the final word. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Lisa?
Yeah, just again to say that we'd just like the opportunity. So far we haven't really been given that because we aren't trading yet, and I do take it seriously. It's not, you know, this is a business for me. This is important, and yeah, we just want to be given a chance to prove we'd like to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everybody who's made representations. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members and the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into a private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mike Nixon
is now exiting.